I think a monarchy is the most efficient form of government.
Elon Musk, demagogue of wealth.
He might be a demigod of capitalism. First Lady Trump must be so pleased. Do you think there's such thing as an ethical billionaire?
We'd have to define what an ethical billionaire would be.
Yeah.
Billionaire obviously is a guy worth at least $1 billion.
Yep.
But
He's got
what
monies.
would the or I guess underlying ethical code need to be? What would it be that his actions must benefit those around him? And if so, to what extent? Or would it be that he acts at his own accord, and whether or not society or those around him benefits is kind of not up to him? He's just doing whatever he wants. Bit of an Uber Mitch approach to it.
Well, it's kind of Bruce Wayne in Gotham City, and how he's fucking loaded. Like one of the richest dudes in the world there. Someone pointed out, he'd probably spend less money and do more good for the city if he actually just helped improve the city and raised wages and did all these things. It was an interesting thought, where I feel like let's imagine a perfect world scenario. An ethical billionaire to me would not be putting any strain on the system, which would either mean that we all have enough resources that we're good, inflation logic, I guess, or it would have to be something where it's like he's kind of said, like they're giving it's not stagnant. It's actually going out there and flowing through. Like, I don't know, maybe we need a new concept of rich, of like how much wealth flows through your efforts instead of how much you can hoard like a dragon.
You know what? Just because of what you said right there, and I'm going to say this under the guise that what is ethical is good for society. Under that assumption, then no, there can't be an ethical billionaire, simply because the wealth that he is holding, you could say hoarding, but if he's a good person trying to give it out, just can't give it out fast enough.
Yeah.
He still has well more than he will ever need, well more than his kids or his grandkids will ever need. And that would require him to hold more than society would benefit from him holding.
Yeah. And I think a big thing that you kept hitting on there that is going to be kind of the key to this is, like, we keep mentioning society. Part of the whole, there's research that implies that your empathy drops the more wealthy you become, because you end up kind of isolated in your bubble. You forget what it's like to deal with reality. I think there's one more thing I wanted to define. What was it? Oh yeah. So the American mythos, though, around the wealthy, including billionaires, is something we also have to define. But we all grew up with the mythos that, capitalism, American capitalism, is what made the world great. Like, we are the foremost nation. And I very firmly believed it for a long time, because our culture teaches us that if you're wealthy, you're in this system, you're somehow morally superior. You did it right. You did what others couldn't. You're the proof. You're different. You're unique. You're special. Very rarely do you hear people actually say, like, I was really lucky. Like, it was just a lightning strike chance that I was able to do this. Or in many cases, I believe it was this past year, 2024, was the first year where all of the new millionaires entering the millionaire pool, I don't know, tax bracket, whenever they hit that, it used to be that it was mostly like people making money with their businesses. This was the first year that it was actually inherited wealth only. So that shows that we've got a shift to more of a landed aristocracy developed. So that mythos is bullshit, because having a lot of money doesn't imply that you're a morally good person. In fact, if you take it to too far of an extreme, it starts to imply the exact opposite, because you're not doing the good you would be doing for others. But then we have to think like a society and not individuals.
What if they gave away their wealth to such a degree that they just lived a good life, whatever, and they didn't accept tax returns or tax deductions?
Oops and shit. Yeah.
I mean, like, that's kind of the dirty little unspoken secret. Or like, these guys will donate hundreds of millions of dollars to charity, and these charities are usually some kind of shell corporation or foundation or fund for this or that. But the ones that are genuine donations, cool. But they still get that back in like tax returns. You just have to provide a receipt.
Oh yeah, no, they have basically three primary ways to gather wealth, which is really interesting. I'll jump into it here, because I think, like, we're covering, like, again, money doesn't equal morality or ethics. That's just the truth. And we just need to acknowledge that as Americans, we're taught that. We idolize the wealthy they're so cool. We can achieve that if only we tried hard enough. It's the stuff that kind of was used to abuse us and get us in line in the long run. What does it
Right.
mean to be a billion in a world where billions of people struggle just to survive? Like, if we stop and think about it, they're just 1% now control almost half of the world's wealth. Let's break this down so we understand how we get here, though. First, but yeah, first let's talk about how they actually get rich, because it's not like they're sitting in a workshop, they're not building every iPhone, they're not flipping every burger. Their wealth comes from three key mechanisms, which one you already touched on, right? Exploiting labor, which we're all very familiar with. That's what brought us here today. Avoiding taxes, which you already mentioned too, of like if they didn't avoid taxes, they'd be able to pay. But then this other one is the really kind of scary one, is making money off of money. Because, we all kind of have that dream that's been talked about for a while. If you hit a certain level of income, you put it in the bank, you don't have to work anymore.
Just live off the interest.
Live off the interest of that. Live off of your stocks, unrealized income. Like, it's an interesting way to game that system. So, like, to your point, if everyone played the game ethically, it would take longer for billionaires to appear. I think it would still be the same degradation in the cycle, but ours didn't do that. So it's a rapid one we're feeling. Amazon, they just fired an entire Ontario branch, like thousands of employees or hundreds, because last year they unionized and now they're claiming that area is now not profitable and they wiped it out. So there's strikes going on and all that sort of stuff. But to your point earlier, didn't hear about that, I bet.
It's the first I'm hearing of it.
Uh-huh. I was Amazon's known because it made Bezos the richest man in the world, largely because Amazon squeezes the absolute most out of its workers while paying them some of the lowest wages possible. Yes, Amazon offers jobs, but the jobs often come with brutal conditions like long hours, intrusive surveillance, impossible quotas. Think about what it would take you to get to the point where you're pissing into a water bottle on a factory floor and trying to hide the piss bottle so you don't get fired.
And I will never do that for an employer. I'll fucking go homeless. There's just like a level
Yeah.
of self-respect that I have to draw a line somewhere. And I'm not saying these people don't have self-respect that have had to do this. Your situation is different. Maybe you have kids. I don't. I can go
Yeah.
home and I'll be fine. I'll be
Yeah.
okay for a while. So that is I just don't I can't get on board with that, obviously, but I just
Yeah.
can't even imagine a set of conditions outside of a ball and chain that would keep me in a position for that long.
Yeah, and I think that's why it benefits the folks at the top. Yeah, I think we talked about this in the last episodes. I worked at oh god, that weird place where all the rich people gather on the West Coast in the redwoods. Um,
Bohemian Grove.
yeah, Bohemian Grove. God, that was a fucking weird experience. There's a whole bunch of like presidents and shit there talking to each other. They have the ability to have barbecues with each other.
Oh yeah,
Like, they can
yeah.
coordinate
Bohemian
just
Grove is
like we
the one we
can.
know about at this point. One of
Yeah,
the ones we know
and
about.
think about it this way: the same way that you and I would sit down and talk shit about work and stuff, and like, oh man, if you have a connection and someone's looking to get out of a bad spot, you can help them out. They're doing the same thing at much higher levels, and like that
Yeah.
empathy goes down the more wealthy you get, on average. Here's the trick: all this shit that we just went through, or rather that we just covered because we haven't gone through it. These poor people are going through it. This is also that Bezos can make about $142,000 per minute.
But there's
Yup.
nothing inherently evil about making that much money that quickly. Not
Mhm.
the act of
No.
itself, but the acts of getting to the point where that is achievable. It has obviously had positive societal impacts if you consider it a positive impact that some lower income communities now have a place to work, albeit a shitty one, but it is a place to
Mhm.
work. Those
Mhm.
areas have seen a slight tick up, probably at least in a little bit of economic spending. Uh,
Yeah, it's
so
that,
maybe
like,
it's,
surviving zone.
but if we're talking about ethical from like a stance of the smallest possible action having the biggest possible positive impact on the
Yeah.
largest number of people, warehouses are not it.
There's
With their H-1B visa practices that we discussed last week, where
yeah.
they intentionally post these tech engineer jobs for Tesla factories at under market values, what AKA what Americans would do
Yeah.
take
deserve.
that job. And then they go to the government and say, we can't find an American to do this
Oh,
from other countries to come and do it. And then they're trapped here because as long as they're under H-1B visa, I guess, ruling, they must maintain that job. If they lose that
yeah,
job, they get
yeah.
kicked out and go back home.
Oh, yeah.
Indentured
Oh, and
servitude.
then and fun one, did you know?
Indentured servitude. That's not fucking moral. Sorry, but
No, no, you're good. No, and it's true. But we also have prisons that are basically free labor. It's modern day slavery. Like we still have a human market. It's really fucked up. It's not like the visual horribleness and nastiness that was slavery and like the spiritual abuse and shit. But there's a different kind of it going on. It's like a new feudalism.
we're
It's
heading
scary.
straight into a new age of feudalism if we're not there already.
So,
You could argue, honestly, do we think the peasants in feudal England really had it that bad, or were they just like kind of like us?
oh, they were
And
kind
they
of
just
like
like, oh
us.
yeah, pay higher taxes or something, and occasionally like a king or a nobleman would come and just like take your daughter. But
Just like us, you grow up in a small city in that time and things are good, you're good. Shit starts to get bad. It's been bad for your family and then the family before that, but there's still the elite who have everything they need but won't share. Like we're describing the French Revolution, and again, there's graphs all over the place. Just Google it. The level of wealth
the
disparity right now is above that of the French Revolution in the United States as we speak, and it is getting worse by the second.
term
Piece of shit.
elite, the term elite, kind of bothers me. It always has. I never quite understood it. It's like they're financially elite, but I
Yeah.
refuse to believe that people like Musk or Bezos were working 17 hours a day, 7 straight days a week, 7 years going. That just look.
Mm-mm.
We all have a brain and we all have the necessity for rest. So them saying that
Yeah.
is probably more like they were thinking about their
Yeah.
business every single moment of the day. And that's just what it is
Yeah.
to be a business owner. So
Yeah.
that is not working every single moment of the day. That's thinking
No, that's so
every
different.
single moment of the day.
Yeah,
And
like, it's if you're so passionate about your role that you think about it a lot, you're gonna be a great employee, and that's awesome, but, like, it doesn't mean that you're
they
working.
fucking
That's
lie
not
about how
what
to get
actually
there because they
drives.
don't want you there. I don't
Yeah.
know many quiet billionaires or many loud billionaires, I should say, because I don't know the names of most billionaires in the world. So most of them
Yeah.
have stayed relatively silent. But the ones we are aware of generally aren't known for being like good employers, good people, or even really like stable people. Like I wonder if it just takes a half broken person who sees so little value in themselves that they must take the stored value of money and replace it with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like the more money I have, the more valuable I am. Therefore, the more people will look upon me instead of having
Yeah.
internal value and having people look upon you for that.
Yeah, yeah, 110%. Because like, I think it's either you're born into it or you, like, really rise your way up with it like Musk did, and it's one of those things of, like, you have to be a certain kind of evil to do this. And I'm not saying like cackling witch evil, although man, it's feeling like that right now. It's
He's not a
fucking
Nazi, Colin. He's just retarded.
that is what the media is trying to say.
That's what they're
And
saying.
like I know
Right.
some very high functioning autistic friends. I know a few people who have whatever it's called when you blurt out things and your body spasms
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah, yeah.
I
Tourette's.
don't that wasn't her. And
The
I've seen
second
the
one
stuff.
for sure looked like it. The first one, the way he just sort of like rolled his rib cage into it a little bit, it didn't.
That's
It
no,
looked
yeah.
like a panic, like should I be doing this? And then he
No,
just,
yeah, I think he
yep.
was working his way up. Yeah. He was trying to get that emphasis up there and like, "Fuck, am I really gonna do this?" And then people cheered, and he was like, "Okay."
Turn around,
It's a
do it
gift.
again.
Yeah, but he's also known for this. So, like, there's stuff coming out from the Tesla factories right now that where people on Reddit are talking about it and going back and forth, where Tesla employees are like, "God, we used to do cutting edge things." Like, years ago, he wasn't like this. He was kinder. He at least would talk with us. He wanted the best for us. And like we had some of the best jobs ever. And yeah, we worked like 16, 17-hour days, but we were treated well. We were paid well. We had amazing bonuses and benefits. And like that illustrates something we've talked about before. If you treat your people well, they will go the distance for you. Although I would say it would be better off like, "Hey, guys, what's the real race? You guys have so much money already. Do it right. Let your teams have lives."
I don't want to pick on Elon Musk too much because I feel like we do
I
that a
do.
lot. But you said something in there that was interesting to me. You basically just said that he changed. At some point, he had
Uh-huh.
acquired so much wealth that he had changed. Now, I don't know if I'd ever actually brought this idea of what I think consciousness could be to you, but what if consciousness is something that just occurs? Like everything has like might have a low level of
Mhm.
consciousness. If you were to take like enough molecules of drywall, for instance, and you were
Yeah.
to stack them, pile them on top of each other, so many of them, in fact, that low level consciousness began to resemble something a little bit higher level of a consciousness because now
Yeah.
it's existing in a different world, different realm, different set of rules because it's so large and it's beginning to feel a little bit of a different kind of gravity and all this. So it has to start reacting differently. What if money is similar to that, where you get so much of it that
Mhm.
eventually it just starts to have a like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
like a corrosive effect on you, but
Yeah.
it's not that it's changing you so much as it is turning you into someone you weren't. Like it's
Yeah.
not
What was that
changing you
called?
from Elon Musk to Elon Musk. It's changing you from Elon Musk to Elon Musk, demagogue of wealth. I, by the way, am
Yeah.
not completely convinced that he is not a demagogue of wealth. I've had this thought a lot in the last several weeks. I'm just like, I
Yeah.
can't say that he's not some kind of like just I'm
Yeah.
using that word, but just some kind of thing that isn't quite human. He doesn't act human. He doesn't talk human. He doesn't
Yeah.
think human. The dude is smart, but he's just so maladjusted. It comes off
It's
as
bad.
not that sometimes. And
Yeah.
then of course he's so well positioned. And
You
then you
can't
take
touch
into
them.
consideration how fucking socially inept he is. You're like, how the fuck did you get there? Unless he's down here strictly to play a game in the wealthiest country that humanity has ever created. The only thing
Yeah.
he's ever been born for to do and because is to come to America and extract its wealth.
Yeah.
And he's
He's
done it
winning.
to such a degree that it's like a spiritual thing to watch almost. Like, I
It's
don't like
capitalism
watching
at
it
its
per
peak.
se.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's unfettered capitalism at its peak. It's
Yeah.
unchecked capitalism at its peak.
It's
This is
terrifying.
capitalism at its ultimate ugliness.
Yeah, this is capitalism becoming a government. Like, it is merged the concept.
Yeah, capitalism turned into a governing philosophy, governing principle rather than an economic one.
Yep.
It's kind of
Although
oligarchy.
I do love this. Speaking of synchronicity, my second example here, speaking of muscle boy, when you have enough money, especially like billionaires, you can have these teams of accountants and lawyers. Really neat, right? You can make it their entire job to look for tax loopholes and havens so that you minimize how much you pay in taxes. Elon Musk is notorious for this. This is how he pulled off the paying basically nothing in federal taxes in certain years. There are other years that he has paid, yes, but remember, he's a billionaire and very close to becoming a trillionaire if he isn't already. Because this video is going to come out a little later, and
He was just
it's a
elected to
small
be president of
percentage.
the United States.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Um, First Lady Trump must be so pleased. They say, "Hey, I donated $30 million. That is an incredibly infinitesimally small part of a billions."
Yeah,
That's not impressive. It should be
yeah.
more like a percentage. I donated 50% of my income, of my billions, to fund the government. It'd be amazing. That would do so much. It would flood our systems with capital. Suddenly we could have repaired roads. We could consider real, like, universal health care. We could do so much. They would be spending money, you know?
Diogenes was famous for making fun of the aristocracy
Yeah.
and just mocking everyone with money and power and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So much so that uh, he once encountered Alexander the Great, and
Oh,
Alexander the
shit.
Great was standing above
Oh,
him.
boy.
Diogenes was naked on the sidewalk, and Alexander the Great lent his hand out, said something to the effect of, "What I've heard of you, and you are very eccentric. What can I get you? What can I do for you?" And
Mhm.
Diogenes just said, "You can get out of my sunshine." Like he just was
Yeah.
so unimpressed. And this is
Oh,
why
I
I
like
brought
this
it
guy.
up. One, because it's a hilarious story, but two,
Yeah.
I'm not impressed by people. I'm impressed by their actions and their demeanor. I'm not impressed by
Yeah.
Musk. I'm impressed by the amount of wealth and the people he's been able to put himself aside or beside. And I say that as
Mhm.
like he himself doesn't strike me as a very impressive person. It's like the things
No.
that happen to him seem impressive, but
Yeah.
it is intentional. It must be intentional
He has some
because
strategy.
he's suppressing wages. He's taking wage jobs and wages
Oh,
away
yeah.
from
Yeah.
Americans in pursuit of his own interest. This is just one guy here, but I can't think of a billionaire who hasn't done this either. He's just
Yeah.
done it to the point that no one's ever seen before.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, pure undistilled capitalism. He is might not be a demagogue of capitalism. He might be a demigod of
See,
capitalism.
that was when I first started thinking about this. I was like, he might literally be a demigod coming down here. Like,
Playing
there,
a game. That'd be easier to believe because then it's like some other creature that thinks it's above us, not one of us.
dude. Yes. Well, and then so I this is why I think it. This is why I think this is because it just makes more sense than like him being human. Humans don't
Yeah.
have this kind of influence. Humans don't have this. Like, in order for this to be true, we have to take into consideration what a god could be. And I think is very much just the spirit of trust that is in the money and not the man. He
Yeah.
happens to have so much of the money, though, that people trust him. So it's
Yeah.
not, this is kind of circling back loosely to what I said about I'm not impressed by him. I'm impressed by the thing that happened to him. People trust in money. That's the only reason it has value. Literally, that's it. We think a dollar is worth a dollar, and so it is worth a dollar. And
Yeah.
he has a couple of dollars, and so he has a couple of our trust bills, a couple of our notes of trust.
Yeah.
And that just seems
$100.
to be such an intriguing quality, such an intriguing
Yeah. It's that mythos.
people want a
It's
myth. They want a
Mhm.
god to follow. So this is what I was
Yeah.
saying, like, guy.
Look, I'm one of those people because I will say this always. In a theoretical, ideal, perfect society, I think a monarchy is the most efficient form of government. But in reality, the same problems happen that we have right now, where wealth accumulates up at the top, and eventually corruption causes this little societal issue where something not good. But if it was a theoretical perfect world where they just had what they needed, the rest went to improve everyone's lives, like nice little feedback system going, monarchies can make quick, efficient decisions. Unlike republics, like we're experiencing right now. Granted, we're more of like the oligarchic republic of the United States at this point.
Been for a long time. It's just never been more obvious.
Here's the thing, the last one is super simple. Literally, you have enough money, you can invest in stocks, you can do all these things to make sure that you just make money. You can be set. You can even achieve a level of wealth that you can ensure that for your children and grandchildren and so on and so forth. It's kind of neat. Like, hey, good for you. Like, you did great. You did so good. You can, I guess this is the mythos. Having money feels like you contributed to society. Maybe that's a better way that money should actually be, in the sense of if there were wealth caps.
Does money trick you into thinking that things you've done uh, uh to collect it
Yeah.
were good?
Well, and if you feel like your life around you is getting better, the more you make,
Yeah.
it's that loop coming back to you. And then it's got to be lonely at some point, like having all that. I mean, here's
I
the
think
thing, they kind of rigged.
you have to be authentic. You have to
Yeah,
be who you are. You have to be who you are with yourself when there's only one of you at the top.
yeah. Well, and then there's just the competition and the stuff that seems like sociopathy or narcissism, right? I don't know what. Not a therapist, but there's some scary stuff. They Our economic system makes all of this possible, and that's something that we have to revisit. Like basically, to grow wealth, billionaires right now have to extract more wealth. And the thing is, it's no longer just natural resources or the economy, it's also workers that they can extract that wealth from. This is why there's a transition from the golden watch era to what we have now, where the golden watch era was we reward you for staying here. I want you to work at this company for the rest of your life and never want to go somewhere else. So I'm going to make sure you're taken care of. To this, that is viewing your team as an asset, a good thing, something that makes things powerful and positive. We currently view employees as liabilities. In fact, Hotel fun fact for you, every hotel that I worked at and knew of did accounting in the same way, where the employee hours were always tallied under the liability section, because we wanted to try and keep those down as much as possible while trying to maximize as many rooms to sell as possible to get every little cent out of it. So instead of like what you would imagine with a hotel, where you have a team of front desk agents, that's why you see only one person at most of those things. The only time those computers are going to be fully filled is if a whole busload of people is checking in and they know the time, because they're going to try to pinpoint it to that. They will begrudgingly schedule a full shift like that if the group coming in refuses to tell them when. But like that's the level of just nickel and diming, and these companies
And
are
they
very
and they also
profitable.
go out of their way to make you think the company is doing, or the company is in a position that they can't offer you more, which
Yes.
fucking is bonkers to me, because wouldn't that make a good employee want to get the fuck out of there?
And again, to your point, this is just the same kind of strategy that Musk has used in laying off a bunch of employees, claiming that they had poor performance, and therefore there aren't any qualified Americans. Hey, Uncle Sam, I need more qualified, better than American people from this country over here that I can also just happen to pay them way dirt cheap
Well,
for.
once again, Elon Musk is not American. He has no lineage
Yep.
here. He has no reason to be here except to collect as many American dollars as possible. That's it. And he's doing a
Yeah.
very good job of it. I mean,
He's great for the capitalism class. He is the peak of that for sure. Like, yeah, you got that Batman hard on, go for it, kids. I think American I would define as like that's our culture, is that we choose to be good to each other, we choose to uplift each other, we choose to help each other out and believe in each other and give each other the freedom of expression and speech and all of this stuff. That's an American.
is that a culture that can breed a billionaire, though?
I
That's
don't think it is,
of that culture. Because if you think about it, I don't know how many adjusted for inflation billionaires would have existed before like 1975.
which is also about the time when shit started to hit the fan because
When 1972 is when we got away from the gold standard, and then
yep,
unions were taking a massive hit, and then we had the recession and all this shit. In the 80s, there was the stock market boom. I don't think the culture you just described is capable of producing something like Musk. I think it takes a
no.
culture outside of this culture at
Yeah,
a national level anyway. So like you get zoomed in to a culture of wealthy people who may be born American but not American in their actions.
yeah,
So if we zoom out just a little bit, or actually a lot of it, and just look at like the three things that billionaires really do best, that's pursue wealth, accumulate resources, and network with powerful people. All three of
yeah,
which, by the way, you nailed just a minute ago. In that pursuit of wealth, if there's any kind of compassion, you're probably not going to hit a billion. In the
yeah,
accumulation of resources, if there's any kind of compassion, you're probably not going to hit that billion. And in the
yeah,
networking with powerful people, if there's any kind of ethical standard that you require of those around you, that one may be a little bit easier to like sort of bend and maneuver around. I think an ethical society
hmm
would very likely be upwards of 100% unlikely to produce a billionaire.
yeah. It really should be a rare thing, and it really should be like part of a system that just triggers automatically. Like, hey, cool, maybe you get a city named after you because you did like this obscene thing, but that's the most you're ever gonna make. You're set for life. Like, you are not allowed to ascertain more wealth because, like, why would you need it? You need to be supporting society. Like, we've talked about this before in other regards of like, there's no pride in providing employment. People hate it. I've had bosses that flat out are like,
You
I
just
was
said like
better.
you guys were
Yeah.
under the liability section in the
Yeah.
spreadsheet. You
Yeah.
just said it, like, Jesus.
Facebook just terminated thousands of code engineers and replaced them with AI.
He said he was going to do that on Joe Rogan, by the way. He didn't say
Yeah.
that explicitly, but he's like, AI is getting pretty good a week
Yeah.
later.
hmm So no, it's this insane thing. Like, here, let's. I always like to do this when I'm worried I'm being a little too Les Miserables about everything. I go and look at data. Let me just run through a few stats, and I think we'll all start to come to a very similar conclusion here. The United Nations estimates that ending world hunger would require about $6 billion annually. Given that billionaires' wealth increased by $2 trillion in 2024 alone, it would be 0.82% of that money could fund the annual cost to end world hunger.
Elon Musk said he was going to fucking do that, by the way, if the UN put forth a proposal and a plan to do so. And they did, and he didn't.
UNESCO, achieving universal primary and secondary education in low and lower income countries by 2030 would require an annual funding gap of 39 billion. This amount represents 0.27% of the total wealth of billionaires as of 2024.
At
Ready
what
for
point is
another?
it just free to, like,
Mhm.
I keep asking, like, at some point, it's not about the money anymore. At some point, you're just trying to fill some kind of void, or you're trying
Yeah,
to achieve some level of notoriety. And
you're literally
since,
Scrooge.
yeah, and since we're not allowing people like Genghis Khan just to come in, like, I'm not allowing that guy to come in and put a
Mhm.
tabletop on me and eat dinner while I just
Mhm.
crush to death. That's
Yeah.
not what we do in society anymore.
Yeah.
But I can all but promise you that the next people under those tables are going to have a B before their account and have a couple of commas in there. And I don't
Yeah.
even mean that in like a threatening or like a violent kind of
No,
way.
it's
I
just a
just mean that
fact.
as like it's going to happen. It
Yeah.
just does. It comes in cycles. Like the Western civilization goes in 250-ish year cycles, peaks
Yeah.
every 250 years. Guess what fucking year we're in?
Yep.
The French
Yep.
Revolution was give or take.
Yeah. Well, and we built ourselves to be just like the Roman Empire in so many regards. We're facing the exact same problems the Roman Empire faced, just the modern era versions of them. Unfortunately, though, Rome rolled like a nat 20 and got Julius Caesar, and we got Donald Trump.
He has a lot of similar hiring tactics as Trump does. He loves the H-1B, and
Yeah.
that if we're talking ethically as far as society is concerned, you have to pick what society you're serving, right? If you're
Yeah.
bringing in thousands or hundreds of H-1B visa workers, that seems to go against the country in which you're supposed to be supporting. So I find
Yeah.
zero ethical ground in that to not
Yeah.
break someone's jaw. In fact,
Yeah.
there's a company here in Florida. I remember where I was for a second, but there's a company here in Florida. They make fitness equipment. They're called Valor Fitness. Their
Yeah.
slogan is something along the lines of like pride, valor, country. Their shit is made in China. I got suckered into that. I bought a squat stand from them. Good squat stand, by the way. But I bought a squat stand from them just to find out it was made in China. I am not upset that I got a good squat stand for a reasonable price. I am upset that I bought a squat stand from an American branded
Yeah.
company
Yeah.
employ American manufacturers. I am an American manufacturer. When I got that box and it said made in China, by the way, it was the biggest letters on the box. I'm
Oh,
not
no.
the biggest letters on the box that made in China. I took that shit personal
Oh,
for like a
God.
second. And I put it together and I squatted a bit and I was like, cool, we're fucking mad
Yeah.
about it, but at least the edge is off now.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
guy, by the way, is not a billionaire. But that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you have to be a billionaire to act unethically as it pertains to your society either. This guy's likely a low end millionaire, but
Yeah.
billionaire behavior there.
It is, and I think it's that selfishness that, again, I feel like this data describes. Because oh, don't you worry, I got more. The World Bank estimates in 2016 that achieving universal access to safely managed water and sanitation service would require approximately 114 billion per year. This constitutes roughly 0.8% of total billionaire wealth in 2024. The World Bank also estimated in 2015 that ending extreme poverty by bringing everyone up to the $1.90 per day poverty line would require 66 billion annually. This is about 0.46% of the total wealth held by billionaires in 2024.
Not we're not even talking a full percent.
No.
All they
The
have to do
United
is
Nations.
0.64%, each of them, 0.64% of your wealth. For just
Yeah. What's
yeah,
your tax rate? Pop quiz. What's your tax rate? Mine's around 37%. And If they paid 37% taxes or more, 50% maybe, we would be able to do these things. But we've been taught that taxes are evil. We fought against taxes. That's why America exists. We were fighting against taxation, unfair taxation without representation. That's why we have a right to bear arms. Hoorah!
Right to bear arms.
Like, but at a certain point, we gotta look at it and realize that the more we actually give back to our country, the more our country can give back to us. And when it stops giving back to us, that's when we gotta be American and stand up. Because,
Figure out who's
hey,
getting back. Two.
yeah,
Fun fact, it's probably the one you idolize.
yeah, it's because again, the system is really taught us that these people at the top did something good. They're better than us. They're luckier than us. All this stuff. It's almost unintentional great propaganda. Maybe it's intentional. I don't know, but it paints them in the light of like, no, you can't be mad at me. I was meant to be
It's
here.
it seems like the ones who idolize the people at the top tend to share similar values and all this stuff, which is not surprising, but they
Mhm.
also seem to pride themselves. And I'm thinking like just like a very stereotypical, maybe like Musk bro, tech bro, finance bro, whatever.
Yeah, the tech oligarchs.
Yeah, I'm thinking very broadly about that. Like they're acting on behalf of someone who isn't acting in their best interest, which is causing downstream harm because eventually they'll be dissatisfied with their job, which is going to
Mhm,
cause them to act out potentially. Men who make up a large portion of the tech, data, and engineering fields, when
mhm.
they become depressed, they become isolated. When they become isolated, they lonely. When they're lonely, they abuse everything,
They get
consumption,
extreme,
and they get extreme.
and our social media encourages that. It's
And
really bad.
it's all supported by this like
Yeah,
this intellect, these fucking big brains that they think they have. You know what I mean? Like this like
yeah,
such a mind to me. And then
yeah,
when their actions that they're pursuing in idolization of whatever, billionaire bro it is,
yeah.
start to negatively affect them, their intellect starts lying to them. And it's like, oh well, you just have to act this way a little harder, that way a little harder. So almost like just being a billionaire,
Yeah,
intuitively knowing that they're probably a piece of shit, and then intellectually looking at them and being like, well, if I act like them a little harder, I'll become like that. And then once I'm like that, I can just chill out. I can just
yeah,
relax. I got the money, but you never get the money. You never get the
yeah.
happiness constantly chasing something that doesn't fucking fit you.
It's almost like I don't think this is all examples, but there might be a couple out there of people who actually kind of quote unquote earned their way. I'm going to say kind of cheated their way up to the top, probably because they like were socially outcast and this was their way of having control. And
None of these
so
guys seem normal, but they do just
even the
it's
normal
always
ish
seem
ones are.
I mean, name one. Like Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg might be normal-ish. Um, he seems chill.
James
Like
Clark, but he's
Jack,
not normal.
what the fuck is this guy's name? The former owner of Twitter. He was a
Yeah,
pretty chill dude.
there's a few like early timers. I knew like this one weird eccentric millionaire from the dot-com boom, and he got out right before it all collapsed. And he just has this little Zen shop in the middle of a hippie town, and like he has this cute little house that he got there before the prices went up, and he just chills. That's his thing. He just runs this shop at a loss
That's all
and
you
does what he
need, though.
wants to. Yeah, no, he was fine. He did it a great way. That's one of the most pure people I've seen, I think. But hey, let me add a little more spice to it. The United Nations Environment Program estimated in 2016 that adaptation costs in developing countries could range from 140 billion to 300 billion per year by 2030. That's a big number, right? That means we're getting up there in the percentages. Um, Taking the higher estimate of 300 billion, that still represents 2.11% of the total billionaire wealth in 2024. So if we wanted to address all of the above issues that I brought up with a combined annual investment, it would be approximately $635 billion, again, using the higher estimates across the board. This total equates to about 4.47% of the combined wealth of the world's billionaires as of
I feel
2024.
like it's doable. That's lower than state income tax.
Yeah,
wherever you might have them.
it's lower than my federal income tax, even. Like,
Or like
it's
fucking sales tax.
this is what gets me is like, I feel like there's, unfortunately, in history, there's more of a lean towards the dramatic conclusion on either side. It's either like a dramatic, we all rally together and realize humanity first, Star Trek starts now. We don't nuke each other off the face of the planet. Or we go into like horrible discourse for a while. But like there's an in-between path that's not exactly ideal, but it would be better. Hey, billionaires, pay 30, 40% in taxes.
And then
Problem
you get well.
solved. Yeah, and stop corrupting governments.
You know what I
If
said about
you're
cities earlier? I want to take that back, and I'm going to raise that about 4 to 6 years to Reaganomics.
yeah.
That is probably when the first billionaires really started to come up out of the woodwork. Because before that, they
Yeah.
they were legit taxed like 70%.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and
And
that's
guess
when we
what?
had the strongest systems.
Economically, we were crushing it.
Yeah, because people were paid well, and, like, there wasn't a way to abuse that system, but then over time, if you follow how the bills go, you'll notice more and more pro-corporate things getting through as certain think tanks and other groups got involved and tried to figure out how to corrupt everything. And my initial instinct was to be like, ooh, conservative think tanks. But actually, we know people like Nancy Pelosi on the blue side are doing similar cheats of the system, if you will, in order to obtain power and wealth. And they don't want to let it
Always ends up
go.
cheating though. Like that's how you end up getting there. Like it feels like
Yeah.
there's always something skeezy about how someone obtains a an amount of money beyond a certain amount. I don't know what
Yeah.
the amount is that you can attain at the peak of like compassion and empathy and all this while still being profitable. But there has to
Yeah.
be a limit to it, obviously. Otherwise, these guys who are operating on a sort of fuck you, where's my money? Where's my
Yeah.
profitability? Where's my pennies? Kind of business model.
There's hard data, facts, integers, numbers, percentages, buzzwords that you use in corporate offices, like synergy. And then there's like social data. And I feel like when both data sets line up, there's a story to be told. Because the thing about data is it's not biased. It just tells you what's going on. And you just have to interpret it. But it can be opaque. I had a really shitty um, director at one point in time who once told me when I was working with a client, I said, hey, really use your advice. This client's been down on the year-over-year mark for 3 months in a row. I guess, how do we handle this? And he goes, I tell you how you handle it. You play with that date range until it turns green. All right. Doesn't matter how many times it takes, no matter, you can always make something look green.
Yeah, well, I mean, data can be manipulated,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and information can be manipulated.
Yep.
It's half the
It's
reason
what
I started this again.
it's what ruins society. It's why you aren't hearing about certain news things, but I am, and vice versa, and why big news isn't necessarily trustworthy. I think all of the data in this is really showing that like the average American technically gives more than any rich person. Like you can even talk about like them donating and stuff like that. They usually have extreme control over those circumstances. Very little of what is donated actually goes to its cause. It gets put up into their processing systems so that they end up just getting the wealth anyway. It's less of a trickle down system and more of a trickle up system.
Or even a
It's
trickle
kind of
sideways system. They're just storing their money in their friends' charity foundation. That's all
yeah,
it
it all
is.
kind of works out together. And if you find someone you really like, you can
It's all
uplift
with
them.
charities foundation account, charity foundation's account.
Yeah.
Probably. I'm not a tax expert. I'm not a tax expert over here. Listen to me.
But like, hey, look, realistically, I'm taxed around like 35 to 37%. I'm taxed more of my total income than most of these people are. That means the average American is absolutely contributing more.
Yeah, and that is their fault. So they're out there acting
Mhm.
unethically against the country that has worked for them, is
Yeah,
working for them. They've lobbied
yeah,
against taxes for them that would go to benefit those who are working for them. So I think, like, once again, we just kind of circle back around to even if you're a good person, I don't think having $1 billion, period, is
Yeah,
ethical. As long as the dollar maintains some level of consistency wherever the value is at right now. If in the
yeah,
future $1 billion is only going to get me a Chevy Cavalier, I probably will change my
yeah,
stance on this. But for
yeah,
now, I think it's
yeah.
about to be landed.
Yeah, exactly. I even tried to kind of poke holes in it and try to look at it from different points of view. The only way I could come to the conclusion that you can have an ethical millionaire is if I buy into the American mythos that says that the person with the most money is the most just by our system. And that's not true. We know it. That's why we're here. Employers take advantage of people, business owners take advantage of people, executives, CEOs, boards. They replaced that dead CEO in a week. It wasn't even a week, it was like 4 days. The profit must flow, the spice must flow.
Yeah.
It makes me nervous to talk about this shit and realize how fucked we are.
Oh, it is going to get so much worse in about 2 minutes. It's going to get more targetedly worse, at least. This was very broadly
Yeah.
speaking here that we just did.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Egg prices are up.
be safe out there, people. Stick around if you're watching the live stream. We'll be back in 2 minutes.